In this video, we're going to look at the concept of resampling. So this means taking a sample, processing it by adding effects, and then recording the affected sample, and then adding more effects and recording the affected sample, and basically building up a selection of new samples out of just one. Okay, so follow along closely. There's a few kind of technical things we have to do to make this work. So this is the sample we're going to deal with. So it's two sort of horn and string stab hits. So what we're going to do is on this audio track, we're going to add some effects, and we're going to record those effects onto a new audio track. And finally, we're going to use a concept called comping, which enables us to select kind of our favorite takes, and we'll have a whole selection of new samples that we can use. So to get us started, let's start going through the types of effects that we can add. So if you haven't got it open already, click on the eye for inspector, and you'll see the channel strip. In this channel strip, there will be a grayed out box called audio effects, and if you click on that, you'll get a menu of different types of effects and processes that you can add. These are all grouped by type. So at the very top, you've got amps and pedals. So these are emulators for guitar amps, bass amps, distortions, phasers, modulation effects, and things like that. We've got a delay section, so several different types of delay. Distortion section, dynamics, so that's like compression, limiters, and gates. EQ and filters, so this is to do with sort of filtering out and isolating certain frequencies. Got an imaging, so that's to do with your panning left and right. Got a metering section, modulation, so your chorus, flanges, phasers, etc. Pitch correction, reverb, and then you've got some extra multi effects here, and like some utility plugins. So this is really just pure experimentation. So I think I'm going to start off with a delay effect. So let's add a tape delay and see what happens with this. A good place to start is with presets that are in the effects. So most effects have a factory default drop-down menu at the top, and there'll usually be a whole selection of pre-made settings that you can pick from to get you started. So I'll choose this eighth note dotted dub. Okay, so that's quite interesting. I'm just going to turn this one off for the moment. I like it, but I want to try out some other effects. So you can turn it off by hovering over the effect in blue and then hitting the power button. If I want to add another effect, I'll just move the mouse into the grey area just underneath, and it will enable me to open up a menu and add more. Let's try a reverb. So let's try a chroma verb, for example. Same thing again, I'm going to find a preset. This one is organised into different types of reverbs. So, well, here's an effects one. Let's try this spherical one here. Quite a few of the effects have dry and wet settings. Sometimes it's called a mix setting. So what this does is determine how much of the unaffected sound there is and how much of the totally affected sound there is. So if I have no wet and only dry, then there'll be no reverb at all. If I have no dry and only wet, then we only hear the reverb. Okay, so you can blend these dry and wet controls to get a balance of effect and non-affected sounds. Let's try and find one more effect to kind of mess around with. Let's go to amps and pedals. So we could run the sound through some kind of amp designer. So this is an emulation of guitar amps. Okay, cool. Right. So You can mess around with effects for hours, really experimenting with all the different settings. I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to be quite quick and kind of make some snappy decisions. You can spend more time on this. If I turn all the effects on, you'll get some weird kind of combinations of sounds depending on each of the effects' individual settings, the presets that you've chosen, but also the order in which you have the effects. So if I swap out the amp and the tape delay, then it means that the sample will go through the amp before it gets to the reverb and the tape delay, rather than the other way around. Just be careful that it doesn't distort, so I might have to turn it down a bit. Okay, so it's all good and well having these effects on, but I want to create a whole bunch of new samples by recording these effects and recording myself making changes with these effects. So the way we do this is we need to create a new audio track. So we'll go to the plus symbol and hit audio and hit create. Now what we need to do is we need to get this sound, the sound coming out of this channel, this track, it needs to come out of this track and go into this track here. So we're going to use something called a bus. A bus is a term for routing a signal to somewhere. So at the moment this signal is being routed to the master output, which is fine. We'll keep it going to the master output, but we're also going to send it somewhere else as well. So what we're going to do is if we look at where the effects are, just below this there will be a grey box called sends, and this is where we are able to create a bus and send the signal somewhere else. We're going to send the signal to this track here. So on the track which has the effects and the sample on it, go to sends and click on the menu, hover over bus and select bus 1. You can have up to 32 buses, so this is basically just 32 different pathways that you could send a signal somewhere. So we're going to choose bus 1, and then this circle next to it allows you to determine how much of the signal is sent. So we want this to go up to 0. So that means that that's basically the same volume that we can hear coming out of the speakers or your headphones is going to also be sent to somewhere else. Okay, so at the moment the sound is being sent somewhere, but it hasn't made its way here yet. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is select our new track. So we're going to put old track, new track, select our new track, and at this point we need to go to our input. So it says input 1. That's if you're recording sound in through like an audio interface, maybe a guitar or microphone or something. We're going to click on this and change the input to bus 1. So we can see that bus 1 is coming from our old track, so it's our old track going into bus 1, and bus 1 is now also going to be the input for this track here. So if I hit the R button and the monitor button, we can see that the sound, the meter is going up for this track here, but it's also going up and down for our new track because this is now receiving that signal. Okay, so this will enable us to record whatever we do from this track, from the old track onto the new track. So just to demonstrate, if I hit record, you can see that it's recorded. Oops, it's quite loud. You can see that it's recorded what I had going on in this track onto this track here. If I solo this new track, there we go. We've recorded that sound. Okay, so I'm going to delete this. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit record again, and I'm just going to let it keep on recording. It's not going to stop. This is going to keep looping round and round and round. It's going to keep recording new stuff, and it will add a new lane underneath each previous recording, so that we can actually like go back and listen to each of the however many times you've looped it round. So let's turn off the effects for the time being, We'll hit record and then we'll start messing around with the effects and we'll see it recording onto the new track. Let's turn on the amp. Let's turn on the reverb. The reverb's quite loud, so I'm going to open up and just maybe pull that down a little bit. Turn on the tape delay. So all these changes I'm making with my mouse, it's going to record all of this onto this new audio track. Let's turn the amp back on. Okay, so we've recorded a whole bunch of stuff. We can mute the old track, and on our new track we'll see there's multiple lanes for each time that the cursor looped round. So now we can kind of just pick bits that we want. So this process now is called comping. So it's where you're compiling, as it were, compiling different parts of different recordings and sort of piecing them together. So when you've got the comping lanes open, if they're not open, by the way, you can click on this little triangle here and it will open up the lanes. So any audio track that has multiple lanes will then have this little triangle in the top left corner. When you hover your mouse over each of the takes, you'll see the cursor changes, and you can just click and drag to select different parts of the take. So we're starting to get like a weird kind of remixed sound here. And so let's say that we're happy with that. We can close up the triangle, and that's our new version of the audio track. And then we could duplicate this over here. Let's just close that down. In fact, what we'll do is we'll make it much shorter, and we'll create much shorter versions of each of these loops. So now I can go into my new duplicated version and maybe change it up again. Create some variation. Not even really thinking about what I'm doing, I'm just selecting different parts of the audio. Okay, so a bit of a rearranging, and I'm starting to get something that's got a bit more groove to it. I'm going to bounce this one in place so that I can do some reversing to it. Pop this over here, double click, file, reverse. I'll unmute that one. Didn't mean to use it. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the fade tool to drag the start point of this so that it fades in a bit more aggressively than it already is. Let's see how this sounds. Okay, well, we've got something going, so this is kind of a starting point. But yeah, once again, chopping up samples, resampling, which we've just done, and then rearranging. So it takes a bit of time to kind of get into the flow of the process, but just through pure experimentation, you can kind of come up with something interesting.